Welcome everybody back to Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation's Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. John O'Leary, it's been too long. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
This is a cool setup we got here. We got the keyboard. We got you off to the right here, it looks like. I dig it. Looking really cool. Hold on one second. All right, so John O'Leary's back with us. His session today is how to use block chords. So we appreciate everybody continuing to follow along and support these virtual sessions. We have built this wonderful archive, a growing treasure of videos, and you can listen to all of these now too on a podcast. For those of you unfamiliar, after these live sessions, all of these sessions are archived. The videos are archived off of the education and outreach portion of our website. It's called The Studio, and they're organized by instrument, and there's even a category for general topics. You can enjoy all of these sessions later. If you enjoy listening rather than watching, we have the Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions podcast, and I think there's over 130 episodes now on the podcast, which not only include this program, but another really cool program we do called the Stop Time series with Frank Williams, which is a history of jazz-focused program. So thanks for following along. If you have questions, we can get those to John using the chat feature. And John's been a regular participant in these sessions. We're so lucky to have him. There you can visit the studio, and you can see all these past sessions he's done. He started off with a history of rhythm section with his colleagues in the band La Lucha, and he did a session on an approach to jazz harmony on piano technique in jazz, how to develop a language for improvisation on piano, how to develop rhythmic ideas to improvise better, how to create melodic lines for improvisation, and then today's session how to use block chords. He's a Mexican-American jazz pianist and neuroscientist. John is part of the highly acclaimed trio La Lucha in the Tampa Bay area. In fact, his colleagues Alejandro Arenas and Mark Feynman are also regular participants in Clearwater Jazz Holiday outreach programs. John has had a winding path. He was born in the Yucatan Peninsula, where he started piano lessons at the age of 3 and played classical piano until the age of 12. Once he was in the United States, he picked up the tuba, and he later gravitated towards piano, but plays both instruments and has scored many accolades on both instruments. He attended the University of South Florida, where he studied tuba, jazz piano, and also biochemistry. He graduated in jazz piano performance. He had a minor in tuba performance, and he did his honors thesis in biochemistry. He toured Italy and France with the USF Big Band and the Jazz Tech Combo. He played in the 2007 Umbria Jazz Festival and Juan Les Pins Jazz Festival. As a member of these bands, he has played with many jazz greats, including Randy Brecker and Wycliffe Gordon. Wycliffe, by the way, was on the Jazz Master Sessions with us not too long ago, which was awesome. As a scientist, John completed his PhD in neuroscience at the University of South Florida, where he is the recipient of the Ruth L. Kirstein Predoctoral Fellowship from the National Institute of Neurological Disease and Stroke. He's been invited speaker at the Society for Neuroscience, Midwestern Stress Response, and American Chemical Society conferences. Please check out La Lucha's music wherever you stream your music, and their latest album, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, which is fantastic. And Clearwater Jazz Holiday is about to launch a sort of reimagined music series experience this year, and La Lucha is part of it. I'm so excited about that. So, John, welcome back to Clearwater Jazz Holiday's Young Lions Jazz Master Sessions. The stage is all yours.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here. I love doing these things. This is great. And thank you so much for helping musicians do their thing during this time. It's a wonderful thing that Clearwater Jazz Holiday does for the community of musicians here in the Tampa Bay area. And so, okay, so today we're doing block chords. Now, block chords is a really cool thing because it's not something that people study a lot, like in, most of the time you're talking about improvisation or your lines or what chords to play underneath somebody else who's playing. But block chords is a way of harmonizing your melody. You're doing what you're doing, like playing a song or improvising, but you're harmonizing every note that you are playing in your melody. And it's a special type of harmonization that really started back in the, I want to say like George Shearing, and even in the earlier big band music with the saxophone section, the way they were voicing the saxophone section. So block chords, essentially, I like to think of them as two big groups. You're either doing them, or actually, it's really just a chord that you're looking at. And then you have your chord, and let's say it's, most of the time it's 4 notes, although you can have more notes. And you have your chord, and then you can do 3 things to that chord. Let's say we have a C6, C, A, G, and E. And there are 3 ways. This is called the 4-way close. Then you can drop 2, where you take the second note from the top, which would be the A here, and you put it an octave below. And then you can double the melody on top, on the bottom. And then you can drop to this one as well. Take the A and put it there. Right? And so, but you don't have to have that many notes to do a drop to or to do a block chord. It can be triad. The point is that you have chords that are going, that are harmonizing the melody, and they're moving in parallel, right? And so once you have that, then the world is yours. You have a tremendous amount of stuff out there that you can study for these chords. And then what is the point of block chords? The point of block chords is to create nice melodies, picking up things. It's to give you, as a pianist, you're really like a painter. Your job is to create different textures and colors, and part of that is size. Sometimes you'll use 3 notes. Other times you'll use 4 notes, 5 notes, 6 notes, 10 notes. But by varying the size of your voicing, you can create different textures and different feelings. And so I find the block chord to be extremely useful for that, especially for coloring melody. Like you can have your melody just, or you can have it So that gives you so much more range of emotions and color and things that you can do there. So how do you structure these in a way that that we can study them, in a way that you can study them and lay them out so that you can practice them in a consistent sort of way, in a systematic way. And so the way that I think about it is by starting with one center, like let's say C. And I think of all the chord qualities. We have major 7, or we have major, we can use the 6th, or the major 7. We have, usually the 6 is the one that's more used because it's, and I'll explain that in a second. We have minor, minor 6, half diminished, also dominant, and fully diminished. And then I practice all of those that way, and then go to the next key. Major, dominant, minor, half diminished, and fully diminished. Okay, so let's say so the bebop guys, especially Barry Harris, coined this way of doing block chords where instead of playing scales through 7 notes, you would add an extra note, and that would allow you to create passing chords in between your chord tones. So let's say we did C6, right? We would do C6 here, like that. And if we do 8 notes, let's say we did A flat, we could do a diminished chord in between our chord. So we have our C chord, then we have our diminished chord, F, A flat, B, D, then an inversion of the C chord, inversion of the diminished, inversion of C chord, inversion of diminished, inversion of C chord, inversion of diminished, and inversion of the C chord. Again. And you can play them. I'm just doing it this way, like chopsticks, so you can see the notes and my hands don't cover it up. But, you know, in practice, I might play like this. You know, and so then I laid out 4 ways of doing these. So the 4 ways would be like 4-way close, George Shearing style. What's cool about the George Shearing style is that you have this hand with only one, you have your left hand with only 1 note. So you can do like more kind of decorative things on the left hand that you can't do on your right hand because it's busy here. And you can do it vice versa. If you want to have a melody and have the melody come out nice and bright on the right hand, you can play this hand soft and this hand nice and loud. Right? Where if I play it the other way, it's harder for me to have a super strong pinky and the other 4 fingers soft. So, you know, depending on what your aim is and what you're trying to do, also depends on what fingering you use to play these. Okay, so we did the four-way close. Now let's do the George Shearing four-way close with the melody doubled at the bottom. Excellent. So now let's do the four-way close drop two. We take the A and we put it down here an octave. Excellent. Now let's do the George Shearing drop two. By doing it in a scale, with a scale, that gives you the ability to practice it systematically and to, it's not necessarily music. Nobody wants to hear you play your scales, but when you have scale patterns in the song, it'll come out super easy. You know, because you just have it under your hand, it'll be easier to perform. You don't want to be thinking about too many notes to really be thinking about it. Okay, so then that was for the major six. For the major seven, because these two would have the same note in common, you would have the B here in common. They don't really, that doesn't work for this thing. You will need a different passing chord that didn't have these notes in common. So one that might work is the two chord. So you can do your major seven, then a two chord, major seven. There's one note in common, but that's not too bad. And that's about as far. Here, you would land on your octave, but not on a major seven chord, but on a two chord, which is fine. It's still a way to create a melody using alternating chords that move in parallel. So like. So it's still a really nice sound, and George Shearing used that a lot to do that major seven. Sorry. And so that's a good thing to practice, although it's not the same as the 8-note scales. Okay, so that's major 6 and major 7. Now let's go with dominant 7. Let's add a flat there. Okay, so again, you would start with the 4-way close. You know, C7 would be C, B flat, G, and A. We do C on top. And the same passing chord, that diminished chord, is B, F, A flat, B is the same diminished chord that you use for all of these for C. Anything that's based on C, your D is your diminished chord most of the time. So C dominant, we have C, B flat, G, and E. And so then what we want to do is put that diminished chord in between that. So we'll go. And again, every time you're moving one step, you're just taking an inversion of the previous chord. So it would be like a C, 7, diminished, 7, diminished, 7, diminished, 7, diminished, 7. Okay? So And then we would do that drop 2, take the B flat and put it an octave below. Excellent. So then we would do the George shearing, adding the melody note in the bottom. I went to the 6th chord. Excellent. So then the next would be to do the George shearing drop 2. Again, take the B flat and drop it an octave. And as you can see, I need to practice these too. Knowing what to do is not the same as doing it immediately. So that's why we practice, so that we don't have to think about it and they just come out. And the major 6 are much easier for me because I practice that a bunch and I use it a bunch. I don't necessarily like this dominant sound. But it's good for when you're, playing and just making a lot of decisions in the moment. You just need to have stuff ready to go. You can't be thinking of things. And so sometimes if you're playing a dominant chord and you're trying to create a nice smooth line in the dominant chord, you just have that ready to go. And although it's not, this is not my favorite sound. Okay, so now we go to the minor. We have C minor, which is C, B flat, G, and E flat. We'll do the 4-way close, followed by the same diminished F, A flat, B natural, and D. And then all the inversions of those. Ready? Okay, so now we'll do drop 2 of that. Take that B flat, put it in the bottom. And then we can do the George shearing, taking the same melody and putting it in the bottom as well. Excellent. And then take the George shearing and then drop that. Do the drop 2. Taking this B flat, the second note from the top, and putting it an octave below. Now, right now, I'm playing it without a pedal. But you can also add the pedal and pedal between each chord to give you a sustained sound. So That can also help if you're going for like a ballad approach and you want to create a nice smooth sound rather than if you're doing like a swinger, that might be just fine. Right? And so, but if you're doing a ballad, you don't want to be playing short staccato. So you can easily smooth it out with the pedal. Excellent. Okay, so that was the minor sixth, and then we did the George Shearing, and we did the George Shearing drop 2. I think we did. And so then that's the minor 7. So then now we switch to the minor 6. So this may seem like a lot of too systematic and a little kind of dry, but for practicing, you want practicing to be dry and ready to go. You don't want to be like having your practice depending on how you feel and all of that. You just want to sit down and know exactly what you got to do. And if you can't do it quickly, you got to keep doing it until you can do it quicker. And then once you can have the scales nice and smooth going up and down, and of course, we want to do this in all 12 keys. I certainly have my work cut out for me. And it just makes it so that when you come to practice, you're coming to work. You know, if you want to sound good, practice is not the place to go to sound good. You want to practice the things you're not good at and go in there and just run it up and down. Okay, so then, or practice it until you can run it up and down. And then you move on to the next thing. Okay, so then we did minor 6, let's do minor 7, let's do minor 6. So minor 6, you have your minor, C, E flat, G, but we're going to add the 6 here with the A. So again, the scale is from here to here. So we have the melody on top, that is E flat, G, A, C. We have the same diminished chord, F, A flat, B natural, and D, and inversions of that in between. So the same way. So the 4-way close would be excellent. So now let's do the 4-way close to the drop 2. Take the A, put it an octave below here. Okay, and now we can do the George Shearing, which is doubling the melody, top and bottom. All right, and then we can do drop 2 George Shearing. Take this A here and put it down here. Let me do that again. That's cool. That kind of gives you like a James Bond kind of sound. So I kind of like those. Those are cool to play in minor tunes. Okay, minor 6. So now we have half diminished. Half diminished. C, E flat. C, E flat, G flat, and B flat. Okay, we're going to start with the C here. And we're doing the same. We're doing the same diminished chord in between. Now, what's neat about the C diminished, normally you don't see this like in books about block chords. You don't see the diminished talked about, but sometimes you have songs that have like several bars of diminished, and I think it's a nice sound to have that. I don't think, it's, for me, it's totally fine. But it's also the same as E flat minor 6. Here's your E flat triad, and here's your E flat 6. E flat 6 is the same note it's the same chord as your C half diminished. So if you if you practice all of these in 12 keys, a lot of these will start seeming redundant. And the more you practice all of these, by the time you get to the diminished, half diminished, you're going to be like, oh, this is just E flat. I can already do this, you know? And so that's very neat. The next thing is to take E flat, C half diminished, and do the drop too. Take B flat here, put it down an octave. Okay, and then the next thing is to do George shearing with these. Okay, and then take the George shearing and drop 2 on that one. So you're here, and you're going to take this B flat and put it down an octave. I like to put 3 notes on my right hand and 2 notes here, so I'll do something like that. Now, as you can tell, we're starting, when you have these notes here down low, they start to get a little muddy. So there is definitely a range where these are most effective. You know, up here, they get kind of lost. The thickness of it gets kind of lost, and you know, it's not as effective. Down here, it's too muddy. You can't tell what the heck I'm playing. So that's also not useful. So then you want to throw it here in the middle of the keyboard, it's where it's most helpful to do. And so think about range when you're playing and practicing this. Okay, so then that was half diminished, then fully diminished. Fully diminished is also one that doesn't get talked about a whole bunch. But what's interesting about a diminished chord, that the diminished scale is already 8 notes. So you don't have to add anything. You already have 8 notes, and you already have 2 diminished scales inside the diminished scale. So for C diminished, the scale would be the whole half. So we C, D, E flat, F, F sharp, A flat, A natural, B, C. And so the diminished chords are your root chord, C, E flat, F sharp, A, which is your C diminished, and then the same diminished chord that we're playing in between all the other ones. Your D, or it's really a G7 flat 9 if you think about it, but it's D, F, D, F, A flat, B natural. And I think it's a super cool sound. I don't hear lots of cats playing it like this, so I think it's a good opportunity to create a different sound. So I think that's cool. So then we would take that forward close and drop to it. What did I miss? Hey. It starts to get a little heady there. Oh, this is why we practice again. Okay, so then George Shearing style. Take the top note and play it in the bottom. And then George Shearing, drop 2, take the A and drop it down an octave. So you don't play it here, you play it there instead. Excellent. So those are all the chord qualities. And when you're learning tunes, you can totally use their melodies, especially scale pattern melodies up or down, and use these. Or you can be creative. You know, imagine that you're writing a sax solo and you're going to put 4 notes, and you can pick any 4 notes. So that's another thing. So these are like the ones I just covered are like the traditional block chord method for creating chord solos and chord harmonizations of your melody. But honestly, any 4 notes can be used to make a chord. Let's something modern. The modern thing is something like this is like a hyper modern chord that all the hot young jazz arrangers are always using this. So G, A, D, and so it's really about the intervals. You have a second, fourth and a major third. And then from there, you can use it like as a minor chord, and then as a dominant chord here, the G using your flat 9 and sharp 11. So that's kind of a neat shape, and it's really more about shapes than it is about chord qualities here. But you can take anything and use it as a substitution or move it in parallel. In this case, I'm moving it in whole tones. Okay, so then you can take any shape and put it in there and use it as a block chord, just as a way to harmonize your melody. It doesn't have to be one of the standard chords that we just went over. It could be anything. And so then there's, you know, for dominant chords, we went with the super vanilla rockabilly, kind of like super vanilla. But man, there's so many colors in dominant chords. I mean, so many colors in dominant chords that we can use. And we can totally block chords those and use them. And I was using them earlier. One of my favorites is to use diminished stuff in dominant chords. For example, let's say we have this C6 chord here. I think it's easier to see it here. And then I wanted to add a flat 9 to that and double the melody. So like a George Shearing with a flat 9. So this would actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 5-note chord instead of a 4-note chord. So imagine that we're coming from G minor 7 to C7 flat 9. It doesn't have a 7th in there, but you can always add it with, you know, if you want to add it, or you don't have to add it. I think it sounds really cool to just have it that way. And you can do it for others. I'll show you the system of using the diminished chord for dominant chords is that you have 4 tonal centers in a diminished chord. You have 1, 2, 3, 4. This scale gives me 4 tonal centers: C, E flat, F sharp, and A. So then I can use this chord on all 4 of them. C, E flat, F sharp, A, and then same here. I can take C and put this chord in C, E flat, F sharp, and then A. And so that gives you a really kind of a nice way to color things. For example, we were talking about, I was playing Misty earlier. I started with this chord right here. So now we're getting into the music thing and not so much the rote way of practicing it. So let's say we're playing Misty. Misty starts with an F minor, and in the key of E flat starts with the 2 minor chord. And the melody is here, is the 4th, but it's the 4th of this chord, and there's no real way of playing an F minor chord and a block chord kind of style that includes a B flat. So unless I played the passing tone first. And that doesn't sound that good, to be honest with you. So then I like to use some, whatever made up block chord. I like this. It gives me my minor third, and my minor 7 of the F minor chord. It gives me my melody, and it gives me a fifth there. The fifth is really not necessarily, it's just filler. But then it sounds nice, like a nice F minor. And then I can George Shearing that. I love that you can now use that as a verb, to George Shearing a chord. That's my own personal interpretation. So you can George Shearing it, and then your next melody is a G on a B flat. Again, if we use the standard, then we don't have a B flat, a chord with a B flat 7 chord with a G in there that we can use as a block chord. So what do? I like to use this diminished thing because I can use B flat 6 or G6, and this B flat here. Or you can use it with the A flat here. So do the G6 flat 9. So you have options. You can pick any of the notes of the diminished chord and it'll sound cool. But I do another George Shearing chord here. So then what is that? Here is a diminished major 7. And then I George Shearing that. So the diminished major 7 is basically like a major, but the two middle notes are flatted. You have F sharp and A and D instead of G, B flat, and D. So if you use this chord, you're kind of delaying the resolution. So I love to use these like alternate chords that don't really fit into any like traditional block chord kind of practice, like scalar part way. So then, for that, for example, Misty, it would sound like this. Right? So that's super interesting, rather than, which is okay, it's the way it's originally written. But you can thicken it up if you're playing the melody, and make it, if that's what you're going for artistically. Okay, so then, so the rest of the melody can be played more traditionally. And then this is one of the coolest things of drop 2 that I never realized what drop 2 really, why would you do that? I understand that it's a different sound, it's cool. And it gives you a little bit more range. Instead of being closed here, you're a little bit more open. But for me, it wasn't enough. As a pianist, what the drop 2 allows you to do is it allows you to play in harmony with the two hands. You can harmonize what you're doing. In your right hand, play a little harmony line in the left hand. So it's essentially, you're taking this, you're a third here, and you're dropping this third here, so now you're a tenth apart. That allows allows you to do all your scale things, but with chords in between all of that. So now you're just a tenth apart, which is for a pianist natural, and never realized how could I use that. So like you have F minor, maybe you're going something like that, and if I'm intense, here, drop 2 here. And so it just gives you that way to like, so in Misty, you go, you have that A flat minor 6 or a D flat 7, or, you know, and I have this chord, and I take these top 4 notes, which is B natural, E flat, G, and B flat, and I take this G and I put it an octave down. And so it just gives you that ability to harmonize and add another layer of musicness in here. So for me, drop 2 at first was like, oh, why am I practicing this? But then realizing how you can use that. Also, Joe Pass liked to use the drop chords to accompany. You ever listen to Joe and Ella? Beautiful duo record of Ella Fitzgerald with Joe Pass. And Joe was the master of drop 2s. He used them all over the place. So for like a D minor 7 to a G7, you might do something like, right? So you have D minor here, D, F, A, C, and you can use all the different chord tones of D minor, starting with the 11th, and it looks like an A minor 7th chord, but we're really just playing the upper structure of the D minor 7. And then you take this E and you drop it here. Again, you're in harmony here. It's so pretty, these 10s. What your melody notes in your right and left hand are essentially doing is this. It's already like an intro for a song. You ever have to set up a singer and you're like, I don't know what to do. There you go. And she's ready to come in, or he is ready to come in right there. So drop 2s are super, we could do a whole thing just in drop 2s. They're super useful, and I really like to practice that kind of two-handed. As a jazz pianist, our left hand is usually relegated to the claw. And so you're just like, and so then our left hand just becomes a scary version of itself. And for Halloween, that might be cool, but for real life piano playing, you want your left hand to be just as good as your right hand. I'm left-handed too. So not only do I have a claw left hand, I also have a loud claw. So that's even worse than having a claw. And so I'll be a hit this October. But you know, you really want to practice being able to move your left hand as much as you do your right hand. You don't want it to be like it's like a monster. So drop two is really helpful for creating chordal things and also harmony, that it sounds, you know, you can stop the drop two and then go back to it. You know, so you can like, you don't have to stay with all chords. You can stop. So one thing that I didn't mention is that you can also do like the regular 7-note scale and use it diatonically without having to do diminished chords in between. So just C major 6, D minor. Just kind of whatever you do here, you don't move it. You just kind of stay here. I guess it would be a D minor 6. And this looks like a C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G 7, and A and C 6. And that can work too. And, you know, totally that is super useful. Like, and so there you go, right? And so, you know, you could do that with your diminished. But you would have your C diminished, C. You can't do a diminished there because then diminished would land here. So you would have to double up on the C. And that's okay. I mean, it doesn't bother me too. In reality, you're just using both approaches. The diatonic playing of the scales versus the 8-note Barry Harris thing that I worked out from the beginning. And also, you know, playing drop two is not exclusive. You go back and forth between drop two. Between drop two and four-way close, or drop two and George Shearing without the drop two. So you can go back and forth. You don't just stick to one and practice. You're just going with whatever sound you're going for, you know. And as you practice these, you start to develop a feel for how you want, you know, your song to sound. So, a short summary: we have the Barry Harris 8-note scale that we add a diminished chord in between our chords. We have C6, C6, C7, C minor 7, C minor 6, C half diminished, and C fully diminished. And all of those have this diminished chord in between. You know, I was talking to Dick Hyman about these one day, and he told me that you can substitute at any point to create the sound you're going for. So you don't, let's say you have here. He said, well, I may play a major 7 and then diminished and then major 6. I don't have to stick with the major 6 the whole time. I may play a minor 4 chord instead of diminished. Instead of diminished, he would do the minor 4 chord, which in the key of C would be F minor 6. So then you would go C, F minor 6, C, F minor 6, C, F minor 6, C, and only at the end do you need to use your diminished because there's no B natural and the F minor chord. And the F minor 6 actually sounds really nice. I like that sound. So that is a cool. So then, once you just start substituting, you have this note, and then this note, and then this note, and what chords do you want to put underneath it? You can go here. So even there, you can delay resolution by playing a different, rather than your C chord, you play. Right? So then, honestly, the scales are just a way to get you started. But once you're there, you can add any chord you want, and you can George shearing it, or you can drop to it, or just play the 4 notes there. It doesn't have to be a successive thing where everything lines up pretty. It just has to sound good, and you have to like it, and it has to be what you're going for, as an artist. So another thing, what was I going to say? I just lost it. I just had a senior moment. Kids don't let you sleep, man. What was I going to say? Just I forgot. Oh well, we'll have to do it another time. But yeah, so basically, practice the scales, practice the different chordal approaches, and then you have the unique ones that don't fit into the scale that we talked about, like the half, the diminished major 7. Instead of a diminished 7, you can have diminished major 7. You have your dominant alteration. We talked a little bit about like the flat 9, sharp 11 with the 13. And we talked about the 6th chord with the flat 9. We can also do this is like your, in G7, this would be your flat 13 and your sharp 9. It's 4 notes, right? So then you can double the top. So that's kind of cool to go between the different chords. You're going between flat 9, sharp, diminished, flat 9, sharp 9. So these are all, you have lots and lots of options to explore. Yes, That's it. Practice a bunch. Take all these different ideas and move them up and down, and most importantly, make music. Practice your scales and do that and sit to practice. But then part of your practice routine also needs to be practicing music. So take the repertoire and say, how can we add this idea into a song? Like, let's say polka dot and moonbeam. We go here. And so, for example, it's just something that popped in my head. And so it has a melody that is linear. Okay, so that's it, guys. Thank you so much. I hope this is helpful. And as per usual, you can always email me or find me on Facebook or Instagram or wherever. And I would love to help with any of your progression and your studies in jazz music.
John, that was awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you so much for having me.
You know, so cool. You always do such a comprehensive masterclass session. This is just another great one to add to the archive. I want to remind everybody there's just so many wonderful musicians and educators participating in these sessions. Everyone from Jeff Rupert to Per Danielson, Brandon Robertson, Michelle Mayo. The list goes on and on. We've got some wonderful upcoming sessions, including a two-part series from Dan Miller. We've got another two-part series coming up from Scotty Barnhart. It's going to be just fantastic. And there's just a lot of wonderful information there for everyone to take advantage of, really students of all ages. And what's cool, John, is we've begun to get the word out outside of the Tampa Bay area to band programs in other areas of the state and beyond, even outside of the state. And we're beginning to have these affiliates that are encouraging their students. They're either working these sessions into their curriculum or encouraging their students to otherwise participate with the archive or the podcast. And our newest affiliate is the Osceola County School of the Arts with director Stephen Grindell, which is really exciting, the great program that has participated in the past. But a lot of the great Pinellas County band programs are also affiliates like Tarpon Springs High School, Seminole High School, and others. So you're a part of this growing treasure, John, and we can't thank you enough.
And thank you so much for supporting musicians in the Tampa Bay area and beyond during this time. This is a wonderful idea and way to keep moving things forward. So really appreciate you and the Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation for all you guys do for our community.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. I'd like to give a shout out to the sponsors of the studio resource and the podcast. That's Blue Water Wealth Management at Steward Partners, who sponsors the studio, and our friends at Marine Max Clearwater, sponsoring the Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions podcast on behalf of the Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation. all of our sponsors and supporters, our High Note Society members, and everybody in between. Thank you all for participating today and watching in the future or listening in the future. Thank you, John O'Leary. And stay safe, everybody out there. Be well, keep playing, and we'll see you soon.